Okay. Hello, this is Deb, host of Deb's Data Dojo and researcher for Calling All Beings. This podcast is part of the Calling All Beings channel. I'm very grateful that you're here today to listen as I speak to our special guest. The first guest today is Nathan, who's going to co host with me. Nathan is co host of Calling All Beings and Luminal Frames, a podcast with Exo Academian. Hey, Nathan, how are you?
Doing great, Deb. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to chatting with you. Very excited to see your channel and podcast grow. You've done an excellent job. A very strong start. So really looking forward to this chat tonight.
I think the secret sauce is this is just a fascinating thing to talk about, isn't it?
Oh man, seriously, no shortage of cool things to
I
talk
know,
about.
right? There's so much to talk about. Okay, so would you like to know who we have as our main guest today?
Absolutely.
Okay, we have a very special guest and someone I consider to be a friend. We have Mr. James Iandoli.
Nice. Welcome, James.
Okay.
Hey, how you doing,
James,
guys? Thanks for having me.
hi there. So I'm going to tell everyone about who you are, James. James works to educate the public on his two YouTube channels, Engaging the Phenomenon and Meta Perspective. He works with concepts of high strangeness, CE-5, telepathy, meditation, and so much more. Welcome, James.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, so can you start at the beginning for us and tell us a little bit about what brought you into working on high strangeness, CE-5, all those fun topics?
Try. I can give you the long or the short. Which one you want?
Define long.
Yeah, the whole show.
Okay.
Um, well, here I'll start off short, and you lead me from there. I
Okay.
starting from a very young age, I had experiences that fall within the realm of high strangeness. Um, so you're talking about interaction with entities, out of body experiences, lucid dreaming, and things of that nature. And they always stood out to me. They were always very vivid. They were always intriguing to me, and they happened frequently enough where I didn't see it as like a one-off. So because that happened at a very early age, from a young age, a lot of these things I just took as part of life. And with that being said, I would even as a young kid, I would read books and all different topics from UFOs to even meditation and different things like that. But more so on the UFO side, um, when in around 2007, that's I'm trying to think. I'm 20 years old at 2007, so right when I'm around 20 years old, I had a series of close encounters that were very profound, and they changed my life, and they were transformative in a way where I can no longer like be interested in this stuff. It was at that point I felt the need to get like directly involved, right, with engaging the phenomenon, so to speak. So that led me on a journey to discovering CE5 and getting very directly involved with the CE5 movement, and setting up some of the first CE5 networks on the internet, and getting involved with CE5 field work, and actually being proactive and doing CE5 contact work out in the field. Because prior to that, as far as I know, all of the experiences that had happened to me were passive or involuntary, meaning they just kind of happened to me. I guess you can say by chance, if there is such a thing. But when I had heard about CE5, I was thinking like I don't know I didn't think of that before. Why didn't I think to kind of like initiate that by myself? So finding that was profound for me, and
So, may I ask, did it feel like you got some control of something that was a little bit uncontrollable with it?
In a sense, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I say in a sense because that's kind of like the very beginning of my journey in the sense of that becoming a thing. Because CE-5 and even being able to work with that framework, to borrow from liminal frames, um, coupled with very intensive meditation practice and study, uh, I think gave me, all that together, and working diligently at that is overall, I think, what gave me more of that sense of maneuverability, you know. So I would say that was the beginning of it. Yeah.
Now, would you be comfortable telling us what those entities looked like at all? I'm just curious. I don't want to push if you
Yeah.
don't want to tell us.
Yeah. So if you're talking about the ones early on, they were almost transparent. People talk about shadow people. This, I guess, could fit into that category, but there was something luminous about it. And at that point, I was, as a kid, I was terrified. Um, and honestly, the real part about that was most shocking to me wasn't even seeing it or them. It was when I heard the voices in my mind or my body, I guess you can say, because there's more. It's more than just like listening. It's more than hearing. I felt it in my body too. But so both of those together, but really, again, what really shook me, I guess you could say, was actually hearing the voice to it. So both were jarring, but again, if I were to describe the aesthetic, it was almost like a shadow type being that had a luminosity to it. But then again, I saw it literally morph into an orb. So that's what those entities actually look like.
I think we could probably do at least 2 hours just talking about light beings and orbs and how they seem to be involved with this phenomenon. Nathan has
Right.
some, yeah, interesting ideas about what that might
Well,
mean too.
I was also going to say that I can't 100% say that this entity and interaction is 100% certainly um, directly associated with the UFO phenomenon. In retrospect, I see
Hmm.
correlations, but at that time in that age, I wasn't thinking, UFOs. That's not for that time.
It's interesting, James. When I became interested in this, it was long after I had interest in other paranormal things. When I was younger, I was interested in spirits and, new age concepts. And I didn't think I'd get pulled into this, but I got pulled. so,
Yeah,
so I do think ultimately all these things are connected.
yeah. I think that there's definitely at least some kind of intersection to this, or point of convergence, if we can, shout out to Exo Academian there. Definitely. So, I mean, what are the odds, right? There's people that don't experience anything at all, right? Like just nothing, as far as they can consciously recall and admit. Maybe some people, have passing things and they just don't pay much attention and move on from there. But what are the odds that one person that has a UFO encounter also happens to have several other types of encounters, whether it's a ghost thing or precognition. And the funny thing is that it seems if you have one of these experiences, it's more likely that you're going to have the others.
Hmm.
The free study, or right now it's the Conscious Contact Research Institute, CCRI, with Ray Hernandez, did a bunch of research, and they had some PhDs, and they took in data from, I think, at least 4,000 people, and that's what the information showed.
Well, one thing I definitely would like is for us to figure out what the basic framework is for consciousness. Like, what is the science behind that? We've had some back and forth discussions about, could it be evolution? Could we just have evolved to the point where we're perceiving things that were already there? Is it just a basic building block that we're unlocking from our DNA somehow? So yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that. So I wanted to ask about the CE5 in particular. I know a lot of people don't understand what CE5 is, and there's some stigma because of some people that are associated with CE5. So I thought maybe you could tackle that a little bit and explain it a little bit to the people who are new to the concept.
Sure. Which part should I tackle first? The stigma or the background of what CE5 is? Probably start with what CE5 is.
Yeah, let's do that first.
Okay. So, well, I can actually weave them together a bit. So, CE5 is close encounters of the fifth kind, which is generally a human-initiated contact event. So it's I actually did a video today that describes the different categories and the degrees of CE5. So, generally when we're talking about CE5, we're talking about a person or a group of people that are intentionally going out to have a close encounter with UFO intelligence. And Dr. Greer founded the term CE5. And with that, the CE5 protocols. So Dr. Stephen Greer founded these protocols. He said he discovered them with UFO intelligence in the mid 1970s, but then he officially founded CSETI and the CE5 initiative in about 1990, 1991. And he kind of set down the groundwork of how he defined CE5. But really, if you look at CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, in a meta picture, so a larger kind of aspect of it or framework would be contact. It's just intentional contact. So when Dr. Greer created the CE5 protocols, it was his methodology specifically of how to do a CE5. And his protocol was basically that you do some kind of meditation, you get into a deep, calm, meditative state, and you do what he calls coherent thought sequencing. And that's, in his view, you're using remote viewing, actually, and you're trying to use your inner vision to see a UFO or UFO occupant or any kind of UFO intelligence and vector them in visually in your mind's eye to the contact site and to your exact location. So that is CE5. And the big stigma behind CE5, many of you will know, is that it's Dr. Stephen Greer. Dr. Stephen Greer is a kind of an important name in ufology in a lot of regards, actually, disclosure and contact. But he rubs a lot of people the wrong way. He's had his fair share of mishaps, and often that reflects on CE5 because he's seen as the founder of CE5, even though in the past, especially in the 70s, there were several different people that were doing exactly what we would define as CE5, although they didn't use what Dr. Stephen Greer would call the CE5 protocols. So there's a distinction there that, CE5 itself is not bound to the CE5 protocols. The CE5 protocols are one way to achieve CE5. In the 1970s, 1974, there was a group in Lima, Peru, in South America, with Sixto Paswells and his friends and family, and they were doing just about the same thing. They were getting into deeper states of concentration and using automatic writing, and and they would get communications and use this automatic writing and be told to go out to a certain location at a certain time and date